without a doubt. Now, looking at a program here that has been very tied to North Carolina, been a lot of movement, staff movement. There's been some players coming over as well, and that's Washington. They made a big move here on the offensive side of the ball as Omari Evans, transfer from Penn State. He was the team's third leading receiver. Harrison Wallace and Tyler Warren were ahead of him there. But Washington losing Johntay Cook pretty much right as he stepped on campus, you were expecting him to be a premier player in your offense. If you're Washington, not sure they're the same type of receiver, not sure that's like the similar players, but nonetheless, you're getting a guy who's going to eat up a lot of targets you'd expect in this offense next season.
Both speed guys, talk about Cook and Evans. Cook may be more your tightly wound, explosive guy. You get him a short pass and he's going to explode. Evans is your classic deep threat. The ball is in the air over distance and he runs under it. You saw that in the bowl game. Talking about Washington's bowl game, Giles Jackson was catching a ton of deep balls from Damon Williams, your young quarterback who you are building around at Washington. Giles Jackson moving on. He's been in college forever. Denzel Boston comes back, one of the better receivers in the country in the Big Ten. You're excited about him, but there wasn't much coming up, behind him as far as younger players that you could say this guy's going to help Damon Williams take that next step. Johntay Cook came and went, disciplinary issues, fit issues. It just didn't work out with him. Luckily for Washington, because of the playoff and this kind of staggered portal schedule, a receiver came on the market from a playoff team in Penn State with that extra 5 days to enter the portal that fits what you need. And that is a deep threat receiver for Damon Williams to replace some of what you saw, particularly in that bowl game from Giles Jackson. You look at the stats, 21 catches, which is not a lot of catches. Penn State famously didn't hit a receiver for a catch in the semifinal where they were eliminated. But 21 catches, 415 yards, 5 touchdowns. You saw him go deep against Boise State in the playoff. Here's the key stat, 19.8 yards per catch. This, again, pure deep threat. You go a little deeper on the stats according to Pro Football Focus. His average depth of target was 20.8 yards. So similar to his yards per catch. They're throwing it to him 20-plus yards down the field. Had a 59-yard touchdown against Kent State, the longest reception of the year for a Penn State receiver. Did pretty good with the contested catches, 80%, but again, the volume was low. So
yeah, there was speculation that he felt like he was being used as a decoy too much in the Penn State offense.
Yeah, and look, Penn State is an interesting team because they had a lot of success and they had this huge hole of receiver, but yet you look at their receivers, they landed at pretty good spots. Omari Evans going to Washington, Harrison Wallace on his way to Ole Miss, the top two guys. So, how much of it was your quarterback, who you think is a pretty good quarterback? He's a projected first-round pick. How much is your offensive coordinator? Again, you think you have a pretty good offensive coordinator coming from Kansas. And how much is this the receivers and they're not being up to par? It's probably a little bit of all these things. You had two great running backs, both of whom come back. You want to focus on the running game. Your tight end's the best tight end in the nation, going to be potentially a top 10 type pick, top 15 type pick. So there are a lot of factors as to why the receivers didn't do as well here. Obviously, Ole Miss knows how to throw the ball, and they're taking Harrison Wallace. And Washington, in terms of receiver tradition, it's hard to get much better. Just look at some of the names of recent years. Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, all those guys, day one, day two picks. Giles Jackson, when I mentioned, the veteran receiver, had a really nice finish to last year. And then Denzel Boston, really nice young player who will be going next to Omari Evans. Really emerging type of guy. And this could be an emerging duo in the Big Ten with a quarterback in Damon Williams, who now you've seen him in the bowl game. You've seen him in spot duty. You've seen him really show what he can do. He is a dynamic, exciting player. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he can throw the ball down the field. Of course, he is very mobile. And I think if you're Washington, you're saying we're probably going to have this guy for maybe 4 years because he's not the prototype NFL kind of guy. If we can keep him and keep him productive, we're going to have a player that we can build around and give us stability in this conference. So it would be interesting to see what happens this year with this receiving core. But I think this is all about Damon Williams and giving him what he needs to make throws to all levels of the field. Omari Evans taking care of that deep part.
Well, and look, not to make this just a comparison between Johntay Cook and Omari Evans, but if you're Washington, of course, Cook was a big ticket item in the portal. He definitely wasn't going to be cheap. He had big suitors. Other schools, Florida, thought they were going to get him for a while there, and we understand Florida has been spending a good amount of money to try to build around DJ Lagway as well. But Cook leaves, and he's a guy who only had 16 career catches in 2 seasons. So yes, if you're a Huskies fan, you're like, man, that was quick. Something obviously didn't work out there, as we touched on the show when he was dismissed from the team or left the team, whatever you want to call it. But you're replacing him. Again, it's tough to replace him that wasn't really there, but theoretically, he slides into the spot as a guy who was the 3rd leading receiver on a semifinal team this year.
Yeah, look, just going back to the specs, 6 foot, 189. He plays in states in the long jump in Texas. He's from Killeen, Texas. Quarterback, cornerback in high school. So really more of an athlete, explosive athlete who's become a receiver and is still developing. So there might be some more upside there just from a developmental standpoint as he gets into that last year of college. But at a minimum, that when Damon Williams drops back and is looking for that deep ball, he's got Omari Evans.